All right, today we're talking about something that's a huge deal in both AI and biology. It's called AlphaFold 3. This is a brand new model from Google DeepMind, and what it does is pretty incredible. It can predict the structure, and not just the structure, but the interactions of pretty much all of life's molecules. We're talking proteins, DNA, even the drugs that we rely on. So yeah, let's dive in and see what makes this thing tick.
So just take a look at this. It looks complex, right? Well, your body is powered by trillions of tiny machines that look a lot like this one. This is a model of what's called a ribosomal subunit. Think of it like a microscopic factory inside every single one of your cells. It's made of proteins, RNA, all sorts of molecules, and they're all working together with this insane precision. Figuring out how these little machines actually do what they do, well, that's one of the biggest puzzles in all of science.
So that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do all these tiny little parts fit together and interact with each other? I mean, if we can answer that, we're not just talking about a small step forward. Answering that question is the key to understanding biology itself. It's absolutely fundamental for figuring out diseases and, designing new medicines. Being able to see these interactions in 3D, that's the holy grail. And that's where things start to get really, really interesting. And that brings us right to AlphaFold 3. It's this revolutionary new tool built to tackle that exact challenge. But here's the twist. It's not just for one type of molecule. It's for almost all of them. Okay, to really get what a big deal this is, you have to look at where we came from. Its predecessor, AlphaFold 2, was an absolute game changer, no doubt. But it was a specialist. It was amazing at one thing, predicting the structure of proteins. AlphaFold 3, though, it's a generalist. It's like, imagine you had the world's best Phillips head screwdriver. That's AlphaFold 2. Now, with AlphaFold 3, you've just been handed a universal multi-tool that can handle almost any job in biology. It's a massive leap in capability. And when I say universal, I'm not kidding. AlphaFold 3 can model proteins, sure, but also our genetic blueprints, DNA and RNA. It can handle small molecules, like the ones in drugs. It can even predict the position of tiny but crucial things like ions. And it does all of this, the whole shebang, inside a single unified system. That expansion in scope is just wow. Okay, so you might be thinking, a generalist, huh? Jack of all trades, master of none? Well, that's the kicker. AlphaFold 3 isn't just a generalist. In a whole bunch of cases, it actually beats the specialized tools at their own game. Let's actually look at the numbers. Let's start with drug discovery. This is a huge one. Figuring out exactly how a potential drug, that's the ligand, is going to stick to a protein is absolutely critical. And as you can see from this chart on a really important benchmark, AlphaFold 3 is hitting almost 70% accuracy. That's way, way better than one of the leading traditional tools called VINA. That's a huge jump. And it's not just for drugs. It's the same story when you look at how proteins interact with our genetic code, with DNA and RNA. Again, AlphaFold 3 comes out on top, scoring higher than the tools that were built just for this. Now, the metric they're using here is called ILDDT. You can just think of it as a confidence score. Higher is better. And a higher score means it's doing a much better job of seeing how these crucial pieces of life's puzzle actually fit together. This is maybe my favorite example because it gets into something really tricky, our immune system. Predicting how our antibodies latch on to invaders, antigens, is notoriously difficult. It's a really hard problem. And look at this. AlphaFold 3 shows a massive improvement, jumping to nearly 50% accuracy. The old version was down at 34%. And just to give you some context, with the way they measure this, anything over about 23% is considered a pretty decent prediction. So yeah, this is a really big leap. So the question is, how is it doing all this? What's the new secret sauce under the hood? Well, the answer is a totally different way of thinking about AI, one that literally builds structure out of pure randomness. Okay, so the technique is called a diffusion model. Here's the best way to think about it. Imagine you start with just a random cloud of atoms, a total mess, like in step 1. It's just noise. Then the AI starts to work on it, almost like a sculptor looking at a blurry photograph and slowly bringing it into focus. It repeatedly refines the positions of every single atom, step by step, denoising that random cloud until, poof, a clear, coherent 3D structure emerges. It's basically learning the fundamental rules of chemistry and biology to figure out what that final picture should look like. All right, this all sounds amazing, almost like magic. But of course, no model is perfect, and especially with a tool this powerful, it's super important to be clear-eyed about its limitations and where we really need to be careful. And to their credit, the researchers are really upfront about the model's weak spots. They kind of fall into a few main buckets. First, sometimes it just gets the geometry wrong, the basic shape. Second, it gives you a static picture, not the full moving picture of how things work. And third, and this one is pretty interesting, it can sometimes hallucinate, basically invent structures that don't actually exist. So here's a great example of getting the geometry wrong. It's called a chirality error. It sounds complicated, but it's not. Think about your hands. They're mirror images of each other, right? But you can't put a left-handed glove on your right hand. A lot of molecules in our body are like that. They have a specific handedness. And sometimes AlphaFold 3 gets it backwards. It predicts the left hand when it should be the right. You can imagine why that would be a huge problem for something like designing a drug, where the exact shape is everything. Then there's this risk of hallucination. So some parts of proteins aren't rigid at all. They're naturally floppy and disordered. But because AlphaFold 3 is a generative model, it's designed to create things, it sometimes forces a nice, neat structure onto these floppy parts. It invents a plausible-looking shape, where in reality, there's just constant movement. So the big takeaway here is you really have to pay attention to the confidence scores. If the model isn't sure, you need to be skeptical. And the last big thing to keep in mind is that biology is, well, it's alive. It's not a static thing. Molecules are constantly dancing around, flexing, bumping into each other. AlphaFold 3 gives us an absolutely stunning photograph, an incredibly detailed snapshot in time. But what it doesn't give us, at least not yet, is the full movie of how these machines actually operate second by second. But okay, even with those limitations, let's be clear, the arrival of AlphaFold 3 is a really big deal. It signals a major shift in what's possible. I mean, having a single tool that can model the vast majority of life's machinery, it just opens up so many new doors for scientists. So where do we go from here? What does this actually mean for us? Well, the potential is just immense. We're talking about dramatically speeding up the process of discovering new drugs. We could engineer new enzymes to make industries more sustainable. We could design brand new materials inspired by biology. And maybe most importantly, we could finally start to unravel what's really going on inside the most complex diseases. There's this quote from the research paper that I think just nails it. It really gets to the core of what's happening here. This whole breakthrough isn't just about throwing more and more data at a problem. It's about building smarter, more clever AI that can take the scientific data we already have and get so much more out of it. It's proof that the right kind of algorithm can find secrets in the data that have been hiding in plain sight all along. And really, that leaves us with one last huge question. You know, for decades, scientists have been working to identify all the individual parts of life. The genes, the proteins, it's been like creating a giant list of parts. But now, with a tool like AlphaFold 3, we're starting to see how all those parts actually fit together to build a working machine. The focus is shifting from just seeing the machinery of life to actually being able to design, build, and interact with it. So the question is no longer just, what is it, but what will we build with it? The possibilities there, well, they're just starting to unfold.